Hey, what's up everybody? My name is Austin, and this is the first time I've actually made a video like this before. For those who have followed the channel or seen any of my other videos, you may have noticed that I don't really have a theme or a reoccurring thing that I do. I just kind of document where I'm at in life, or what it is that I'm currently doing. As you may have noticed with like all of the hair on my head, quarantine is really taking its toll. But I can't complain. I'm here, I'm making a video. I'm happy, I'm having a lot of fun. I just really want to, in terms of the future of this channel, I just really want to have a space where I can articulate my process on how I approach cinematography or how I approach filmmaking in general. But that leads me into the topic of today's video, the plugin for Davinci Resolve called Dehancer. And as of now, it's only available for Mac users. Even if you aren't, I would still pay very close attention to this company in general, because I feel like it's inevitable that they will eventually branch out into different platforms. And in very condensed terms, because the science of the actual plugin goes way over my head, Dehancer is a plugin that allows you to take your footage and make it look more like classic film. They give you an array of tools that I haven't really seen in any other program that really allows you to transform your footage from looking like the standard digital image and making it look like something completely different. Okay, so we did jump over into Davinci Resolve, and as you can see, we got a couple different shots here. Some are from the Blackmagic, this one's from a C300, and this one's actually from a Canon 5D. I wanted to give you not only an array of shots with different exposure, contrast levels, but I also wanted to show you how Dehancer behaves with different bit depths and just file formats in and of themselves. The Blackmagics are all raw. The C300 is it's Canon's MXF. So yeah, I'm not really sure. And then this is just a 5D, so just a H.264 file. And I forgot to mention during the talking head portion that Dehancer did send me an activation code that allows me to use this product. So I was not paid to use this product, and they aren't forcing me to say anything, but I did want that to be clear. And so as we come in here, we'll just open the effects tool, and in this first shot, I will take you through basically my process of using this plugin. So this is just let me turn that off real quick. This is just a basic shot of a house. I actually used this shot in the Dehancer, the first Dehancer video that I did. So usually where I start is obviously putting in the right color space that my camera or that the footage that I have works in. If you have a camera that does not shoot in log profile, like a 5D or something like that, then you would want to select Rec 709. Rec 2020, if you don't know what that is, then you're probably not going to need to select it. Same thing with ACES. If you don't know what that is, you probably don't need it. And now we go into vendor, and we have a list of different cameras. But they don't have all kinds of cameras. You can see they only have 2 for Canon. Fujifilm, they only have 1. Red, they only have 2. So like, and I'm sure they will continuously update as they expand, but for now we'll click the Pocket 4K, since that's the footage that I have personally with this shot, and we'll click on film. Now in terms of these settings, I usually don't touch them. If I touch anything, maybe I will touch the exposure compensation. I believe that's what that's shortened for, but I usually don't. And so in the film tab, as you can see, we have lots of different selections here. I mean, I think this is the most out of any plugin that I've seen. You can see that there's somewhere between 53, I think, and 57. I know that's a pretty big gap, but there's a lot to choose from for sure. And so I'll just click on Kodak Ultramax. And even though I said that there was somewhere between 50 or whatever, there's, in my opinion, there's technically more looks you can get out of. It's not just 50 basic looks just on film stock, not even considering the exposure levels or the contrast or the color, just in how the film stocks behave. There are so many different looks you can get out of this, and I'll show you here in a minute. So if I click on auto expand, that's going to set the black and white points for me. Now I usually do click this because if I need to change anything, I can just go change. It's basically making an estimation as to what they think the black and white points based off of this information here in the shot, and they set it for you. Now here's a tool I was referring to when I was talking about getting a lot more than just the 50 standard film stock. If you come to push and pull, as you can see, you can really change the way this image looks. And if you are unfamiliar with pushing or pulling, it's like the post-process development of specific film that has been underexposed. So if you underexpose the shot with the idea of pushing it, then you would underexpose and then tell the people developing your film that you want to push it by one stop or half stop or whatever. In the same way with the pull, if you wanted to overexpose in your shooting and you wanted to pull it down to a proper exposure, you could ask the people to develop it to pull it by half a stop or full stop or whatever. And you might be wondering why you would do that, and the honest answer is because you can get so many different looks. I'll click on another. Let's see. Let's just see what this does. So as you can see, these are very different looks and how the film behaves based off of you pushing or pulling it. So I'll stick with the Kodak Ultramax film stock for now and leave the push-pull slider around negative 0.276. Usually I try to leave this alone. You can analyze the current frame. That's if you don't click auto expand, I believe, and it'll set it for you. And it does a pretty good job for the most part, but usually if there is a problem with clipping or some type of weird artifacts that you're getting on your image, and especially in the shadows, it usually comes from the black point being too high, too low, or whatever. Then we come into print and I can go down, drop the exposure a bit, and you can see there's already a lot going on here. If we just take a look at our waveform as well, we can see that. I'll add some tonal contrast, and that tonal contrast works really well. It behaves really well with the footage. Pull that there, and then the color density. So as you can see, if you take a close look at the blues here, let's just zoom in about 200. So if you look at the shadow and maybe even the sky, the color density is at negative 100. Let me reset it to 0. You can see what that does, and we increase it. Increases a lot of that color, but it's only specific color. I guess my understanding of it is you can intensify these really strong colors in the image. This slider does not always affect the image, like even as much as it's affecting this one. It really depends on the circumstance in the shot and the colors that you have existing in the shot. Because as you can see, it's not really affecting these greens all that much, but it really is. It really is shifting those blues. So yeah, that's a feature that you can have in terms of getting that color right. And saturation obviously speaks for itself. Although you can do this and try to get a black and white, but they have plenty of great black and white film stocks in here, so I personally wouldn't do that. The analog range limiter just kind of sets like a faded look. I mean, it literally limits the exposure and contrast levels, I believe, into an analog range. I know I just kind of reworded the name of the function, but I mean, that's honestly what I think it does. And then as we move into color head, this is one of the best features. It behaves a lot like printer lights if you're familiar with Color Lab or like Look Designer, and it's really effective. So as you can see, if I look at this image, it may be a little blue, it may be a little too blue. So if I pull it into the yellow direction, we start to get a pretty good look. Turn it off, turn it on, you start to see what it's doing with those whites. Also, if you hit the gang button, all of these behave together. I don't personally use that often, but you may need that for some reason. But again, if we pull this yellow down, and then maybe if we want to go red, if we want to go green, you can see what's happening. Let's push it red, add a bit of cyan, or maybe take some now let's see, check it off, check it on, off, on. So yeah, I mean, and you can really go crazy with this. I mean, these sliders go a long way. So just pushing it even slightly can really impact the image. And then everyone's favorite thing is film grain, obviously, and they've got some pretty good features here as well. So if you want to really increase the size, as you can see, especially in the sky here, you know, can really get there. You can increase the amount and really start to mess with that. And then if we pull back out of it, now see that just looks incredibly grainy. Turn it off, turn it on, but you have those options there. And you have the film resolution, which is really cool. You can drop down how defined those edges are. See, if I turn it all the way up, that's pretty like much how the camera captured it. Turn it all the way down, now it's really starting to blur the image in a way. And not to get philosophical about it or anything, but it does seem that film has an immense amount of detail usually, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's sharp. It can still be blurry, but you can see the lines in the texture of a building, or the texture of leaves and stuff like that. So this is, I wouldn't sleep on this slider at all, because you may not necessarily want it to be too sharp, and maybe you do. Maybe that's the look you're going for. But if you really want to craft like a specific older kind of cheaper film look, you may want to drop the resolution a bit and kind of find a medium. And then of course they have the shadows, midtones, highlights, sliders, so you can really kind of nail down where you want the grain to exist in the image. And if I just play it too, we can see how the film behaves. I don't know how well you can see that, but there you go. And then we're starting to get into some of the more interesting aspects of this. We're starting to get into halation, bloom, and stuff like that. Now this really gets the film look going. So if I click halation, not too much has happened yet on screen, but if we back it out, let's mess with this amplify really quick just to show you what's going on. So if you can see all of those outlines, I'll turn it off, and then you can look here or here as well. So I'll turn it back on, and you can see what it's doing. Now that's pretty big. We can go impact to mess with it, the scattering if you want, and then mess with the sensitivity so you know where it's hitting, and then drop the amplify a bit more, and then now we've got something that's pretty good. If you look at those outlines again, that's halation, and that looks really good in my opinion. And then we've got bloom, and bloom just blooms out the highlights. It just kind of gives this kind of a similar effect. If you're familiar with the black promise filters, you can see just the kind of bloom effect that you're getting out of there. So again, it's really just so many different options that you have. And here we have vignette, and I don't usually use this. And so now we get into film breath and gate weave. And these are two features that I was not necessarily familiar with until I got with this program. It's I don't really know the science behind it. I don't really know how to explain what exactly is happening, but it basically has to do with just the manual nature of film. So like film breath, in a sense, I think it's like the shifting of color and color temperature. If I let me just turn it all the way up really quick. I'll leave it there. And then if I mess with the exposure, contrast, and put the color all the way up so you can really see what's happening. So my computer is running a bit slow, but if you look closely, especially at the white, it seems like the image is changing color, right? Like you see it's red right there. It's now starting to get a little blue. It may hit a little green, a little greener here. Now it's going to get to that magenta. See, and that's a product of film. Like sometimes that happened through processing or something of the sort. Same thing with gate weave. Now gate weave has to do more with film running through an actual projector. There's a bit of movement that happens. See, if I turn it up, you see it starts to move. Now see, that's a very exaggerated look just to kind of show you for representation purposes. But again, if you really want to craft that look, these options are here for you. And so here I go into the IRE false color, and it just shows you again how your exposure looks. And so this is another cool tool to make sure that you're getting where you need to go. And because I'm seeing that This is a little hot, right? This is up here by the 100 in the orange and red areas. You can always come back here, and in this node prior to the dehancer node, by hitting Shift S, you can work in that original color space, in your original camera color space. So if I pull it down, right, maybe not too much, just to kind of bring off some of that hotness, we can come back here and we can see it kind of alleviated a lot. There's still some hotness there, but it still looks great in my opinion. And here we have the output. So this just acts as like an opacity meter. And here, LUT generator, you can export this LUT. You can export the way that this looks. But to be clear, it does not export the gate weave, film breadth, bloom, halation, and film grain. It doesn't export those things. It really just focuses on exporting the contrast levels and the exposure levels of the image, as well as the color. Okay, and so there's the final image. Just look at it. I still got some of that film breath on. As you can see, that exposure is getting brighter and darker. I have it on pretty high, so that's why it's doing that. But just as a reference, that's before, straight out of camera, and that's after. And so now I'll just kind of run you through the remaining shots. This was shot with the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, just a personal project I did. It's just a shot of my brother. And as you can see, my computer's starting to run very slowly, but there we go. This is before. This is straight out of camera. There's a little smooth, and there's after. And so what I did here, again, I didn't touch anything in this area. I actually chose the Prokudin Gorsky 1906 experimental film. And if you are interested at all in early color photography, you should search up Prokudin Gorsky. Um, it's pretty interesting. Like this photographer, I guess he was like on the forefront of color photography, and he's got some really cool pictures. So check that out. And you see, I just tweaked the push and pull there just a bit. If I pulled it down, there's you see what is happening, and then pull it all the way there. It's got that look to it as well. So I found there just to find a middle point. And then these are my exposure settings and my color. So if I uncheck that, you can see what happened. I basically colored trying to get his skin tone a little more neutral, more on the red side. And here's a good example of some halation. If you look at his glasses, turn that off, turn that on, turn that off, turn that on. You see what's happening there. It's pretty cool stuff. And then also I took in here, I just kind of messed with the exposure a little more. If I turn that off, because those highlights were so blown out. But the beauty of working in log and working in a way like this, you can save that kind of stuff because it's there, obviously, in terms of just a little bit of clipping there, but you can really save a lot of that. And even like these colors, like deep into the real dark part of the image, those colors are able to sustain themselves, and a lot of that has to do with the Blackmagic. But I think there is something to say too for how well Dehancer is able to handle these extremes. Now, like I said before, this was shot on the C300, another personal project I did. And since there isn't actually a C300 selection here, I just did the C200. I figured it would be at least close in the same ballpark. So for the stock, I chose this Agfa Color Portrait XPS 160. I think it looks really cool, looks really good. If I turn that off, that's just kind of like a basic, and that's what it's doing. Let me show you the before image straight out of camera. It's the log file, and that's the after. And yeah, there you go. And there's a really good bloom effect here going on. If you look and pay attention to the top of his head, his forehead and nose, and maybe even his shoulder a little bit. Turn that off. Here, I'll zoom in so you can see a little more. Turn that off. Turn it on. And now this is another shot from my Blackmagic, and I wanted to use one of the more experimental kind of film stocks, and this is Metropolis, so it has like this kind of almost brownish, kind of like a rusty kind of color to it. If I turn that off, this is the log file. If I turn that back on, this is what it looks like with it. So it's like there's a bit of this kind of, it's kind of hard to describe, but it really looks interesting. They have a lot of these experimental, really weird. If you check out this one, like as you can see, it looks pretty crazy, and the contrast is off. You may notice this looks really bright, even though all I did was switch a film stock. Now I think that's a lot of credit can be applied to Dehancer. It's not just color accuracy that they're going for. They are going with how the film stock actually behaves. So when I click through different film, different contrast ratios and different exposure ratios are evident just by a single click. So that just gives them more credence of how much effort they put into actually crafting a solid program. If I were to choose this purple, it looks really crazy. I can pull that down and give you a bit more of a basic look here, and I'll turn off the color head to show you what it is. And yeah, that looks nuts. But I mean, it's if that's the look you're going for, then you have that option for sure. And for this shot, like I said, I shot this with the Canon 5D. I'll show you a before really quick. That's just what it looked like out of the camera. And then when we click on Dehancer, this is what it's doing. So you can see that it really behaves well, even though this 5D is only 8-bit footage. The colors and everything look, I mean, it looks pretty solid. And you can see I pushed this color head in a pretty wide way. Like if I go big screen again and I can click here, that's what it was looking like before. But I remember, and this was from a short film I shot back in school, we wanted to create this dream effect and just this otherworldly look. And this looks pretty natural and it looks fine for what it is, but we used a lot of green lighting and I didn't want to get away from that. So we click and try to keep some of that in there. And now I may want to come in and fix the skin tone a bit more. But I mean, that again, it's just preference. And so if we look again, that's what it looked like out of the camera, and that's what it looks like with it. And for the last shot, not only did I want to show a night shot, but I also wanted to showcase the different ways you can approach crafting a look. So if I turn it off, that's just straight out of camera. Yeah, now my computer. Okay, there we go. So yeah, that's straight out of camera, the log file, and that's what we came up with. But I actually shot this with my Blackmagic, but I set the color science to Gen 4. Now this is a unique issue to people who use Blackmagic cameras, but you can come in here into the raw tab and change the color science generation if you want. And so the reason why I might want to do this is because if you own a Blackmagic Pocket, you know about these tail light issues or these really reds and stuff like that. So there's gamut compression. If you pay attention to that, you see what happens. Gives you a bit more detail. And if I go here, I'll just turn that off. And if I go generation 4, you see I click that, it doesn't necessarily do the same. Generation 5 is supposed to retain a bit more of that information. So maybe you want to go there. But when I do that, there isn't a generation 5 tab here. I think this is only for generation 4. So what I did is I just set it to Rec 709, but then I made sure here that I did generation 5 LUTs from Buttery LUTs and just applied that first. So if we turn off all that and leave that on, this is with just the basic LUT applied, the Rec 709 look. And now this is with Dehancer applied. Now, one of the things about this image in particular was how yellow it was, I was noticing. So if I uncheck the color head, you see that yellow orangish kind of look. And if you want that, obviously keep it. But in my instance, I wanted to fix that, kind of give it a cooler look, and I'm able to do so. So yeah, that's pretty much all the footage I wanted to show you. I know this video is pretty long, but I just kind of wanted to make sure I covered enough and as much as I could. So for this last part of the video, I do want to showcase some of the things that they sent to me personally, some of the presentations and film blogs and websites and YouTube videos that they have personally from Dehancer and are willing to share with their community. Their community is honestly one of the best things I think about the program. Just the idea that they are willing to share and explain themselves and really just make sure that everybody has a pleasant experience using their product. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. So this is one of the first files that they actually sent over to me. This is their film lab based out of Moscow, and I have no idea how to pronounce that, but they give you a lot of details in English, of course, about who they are, what they do, and how they go about making their business. So you can see there's different they sell different film stocks and different types of films. They have affiliations or partnerships with some of these companies, so they're really transparent with their sales and just everything. They're really willing to just kind of share and be open with you. And if I click over here, here's the next thing that they sent to me. This is actually comparing their Dehancer Pro version, their light version, to Film Convert Nitrate. And if I click over here at the articles, this is one of my favorite things. So you can literally click on any of these articles and you can find out what film breath or gate weave is. You can find out the difference, why you should maybe go for Dehancer over a LUT, obviously. And they put ones and zeros here and the actual film border here. I mean, yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. And then they explain their CMY color head. You know, they explain all these different things, and here they even explain how they build their film profiles. There's an entire article detailing step by step what they did and how they're able to craft these looks. So that wraps up the end of this video. I know it was really long. If you lasted all the way to the end, thank you so much. Let me know if I should make more videos like this. I'm not sure if I will. Thanks for watching again. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and peace.